gamers, Sergio back in game. It's now release day for BT21 World's Convergence, and we end off the countdown with, as a mirror to 2.5's release countdown, we'll be revisiting Royal Knights, and as we go over the upgrade version from the new tools we got from 2.5. And before we crack into it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this around to help with the algorithm. And let's dive on in. And now on to the egg deck. With my lineup being the pretty much bread and butter of the deck, being the full playset of King Drazel, or alternatively, Yggdrasil at the full playset, since it ends up being your main reducer in this Megazoo deck. Since, obviously, as it's already has history already, it already gets a base 4 reduction, but every start main, it sucks in another egg, and all of your Royal Knights are on board. And then adding an additional 1 reduction for each source underneath King Drazel, while also granting a inheritable to itself to refund back 1 memory whenever it sees a Royal Knight option be played out. And that's it for the egg deck. Now on to Digimon lineup. For the only rookie for this lineup, I end up running the 1 rookie, and that being the 1 copy of Structure Deck Sysmon Blanc. Since, again, this deck is a Megazoo deck, so it'd be nice to have at least one card at least that can shine through to help. As well, Blanc also helps with his consistency, since you just pitch a card from hand to draw 2. Well, she also has Decoy Red-Black for your Royal Knights. And that's it for the rookie lineup. Now on to level 4s. The card deck, for me being a 4-3 split of the best assistant himself, Omekamon. And this lineup being where I kind of gouged to make room for Blanc. With the main focus definitely being, obviously, BT20 Omeka, since he's the main enabler and Liberator partner for the deck. Since it ends up being a blocker body, with the on-play, if it sees, when it comes down while you're at 1 or fewer security, allows himself to warp up into Omni X, which obviously ends up being the partner card to this Omeka, while also having the nifty on-delete effect to tuck itself underneath Yggdrasil, further adding to Yggdrasil's reduction. In addition, for the inheritable it grants Yggdrasil, Omeka can come out in response to seeing one of your security being removed by suspending down Yggdrasil. Though, do keep in mind that although you do have multiple of these underneath Yggdrasil, you only get 1 of these out, as you already paid the cost of suspending Yggdrasil. And then, without saying, for the BT13 Omeka, having the nifty on-play to draw 1, and the on-delete that furthers the gameplay to tuck a Royal Knights from hand underneath Yggdrasil to then further the reduction. Then for tech level 4s, for me, Omekamon from BT13 still comes to mind as the Floodgate tier of the deck, since on playing gets to murk a level 3 Digimon, as well as the effect when it gets deleted. That's it for the non-arc, supporting cast. Now, starting for the meat on potatoes, while still at level 4, needing the full playset of BT13 Magnamon as one of the key starters you could play out early on. For its 7 cost, that gets easily reduced to nothing, being a blocker body that could drop early on as well, and being able to benefit from it whenever it leaves the field, since the all turns draws you 1 for the most part. Excuse me. Since, again, you could use this as a chump blocker, still get the draw 1, or simply remain on board and start your reduction ramping and draw 1 as your first Royal Knight on board. That will then get absorbed into Yggdrasil. That's it for the level 4 lineup. Now on to the meat and potatoes the deck, and that being the level 6 lineup. And starting off with the lowest cost level 6s I'm working with, I ended up going for a 1, 2, 2, 3 split between BT13 All Force Vija, BT19 Lord Knight, EX8 Medieval Gaunt, and BT20 Justmon. Going down the line, All Force Vija in here is a more so tech pick option, given that the deck has so many so many deletion effects, that I might as well toolbox in a alternative removal option in the form of bouncing. Since an All Force sees a Digimon, Royal Nitrate in this case, be played, you're able to bounce 1 Digimon with no sources to hand. Then, for Lord Knight, still useful in the fact that on play, you get to revive any of your level 4 lower Digimon from the trash, while also having a opponent's turn effect to redirect into any of your Royal Knights, which comes in handy for some of the new tools in the deck. Then Medieval Gaunt does not really need any more explanation, given how meta-defining he is, as a very great pain in the butt for the opponent. And then for highlight, level 6, the new BT20 Justmon is useful in the fact that it practically spawns a second body that replaces itself, as the Artho Renee Poor token is pretty powerful. Pretty useful support. And once again, will remain on board since it doesn't have the Royal Nitrate. So once Justmon leaves, it at least leaves a useful token on board. And to coincide with its token spawn ability, during your turn, Justmon is able to take out a 8000 DP or less Digimon board and allows a valid attacker to attack immediately. And going over the Aethorian Poor token, this token ends up being useful in the fact that you can use it for chump attacks, since it has a decent set line, 6000 DP, that can reboot, also could be used as a chump blocker, as well as having the decoyed red-black as well, to also protect your red and black Digimon on board from effects. Then, for tech options within this lineup, definitely can see reasoning to throw in, Dynasmon as another searcher and establisher for stuff and trash. And then BT13 Justmon for global boost, as well as being able to also snipe something out. And then BT13 Leopard as a means to add further cost reductions while it's on board, as well as creating a granting blocker to a body on board. And that's it for the lower level, well, the lower end lineup of Royal Knights. Now we go up one cost, as we go over the only 12 cost Royal Knight in the 12 cost inclusion of the deck, that being the one copy, the new BT20 Alphamon, with it being more so as survivability option for the deck, since the main play for it is the recovery 1 when it gets played out, which also plays into another aspect, as the color requirements definitely help for further toolboxing, given the other tools they threw into this deck. Then from there, a possible 12 cost that also can throw off consistency would be the BT13 Lord Knight, if you wanted to, as a means to recycle a Royal Knight in trash, and can have the unique floodgate effect to gain you back 1 memory for each Royal Knight if your opponent attacks. And that's it for the 12 cost lineup. Now on to the 13 cost lineup, which ends up being a 2-1 split between BT13 Gauntmon and BT13 Genkumon, since, for the most part, these two are your upper echelon for your low 6s, with Gaunt obviously being the heavy hitter level 6, since you also can further reduce his play cost as long as you have no Digimon board, which ends up being a reduction of 2 for every 5 cards in both players' trash, with him being a rush body, as well as having the powerful on-play when digivolving effect that can trigger, when attacking effect, to snipe out stuff on board, that being stuff on the low end and your opponent's high end. Albeit you do end up missing anything that ends up hitting between the two thresholds. And then Genkumon here being another blocker body that you could play out, and has the nifty on-play effect to, bring out any Royal Knight from underneath the Jaeger Cell, or revive a Sistermon in trash to make use of them. And that's it for the level 6 lineup. Now on to level 7s. Spearheading the charge will be Omnimon BT13 Omni at now 3 copies, since although he spearheads the charge, given the deck's new new ramping, you don't really need to rely on BT13 Omni to close out games, but you still have the useful ability to initiate the march with them coming down to make use of your materials that you've already accumulated. And to coincide with Omni, we also end up upgrading him up with the full playset of the new BT20 Omni X, as a means to, be the complete brute of the deck, as it ends up being a raid piercing blocker body that is an all delete on legs, as you select 1 Digimon on your side and 1 Digimon on opponent's side to then delete everything else, and you subsequently can clear board, as it then bot decks an opposing Digimon on board. With this also having the very nifty end of turns effect to grant anybody on your board rush, and allowing them to attack without needing to suspend. With that effect definitely being able to close out games or allows any fresh bodies on board to attack. Heck, even with itself, you can designate it to then attack and then trigger all of its perfect pairing of raid and piercing to pretty much run over something and immediately pierce. And to coincide, well, to end off this level 7 lineup, we end up going over the ace tools of the deck, which ends up being a 1-2 split between Gallant Crimson Mode Ace, Just on GX Ace, and Alphamon or Yukon Ace. With Crimson Mode Ace definitely being a good inclusion for the deck, since it ends up being a ace body that will remain on the board since it's a Galmon that has lost the Royal Knight trait, thus would not be taken in by Yggdrasil, but has the nifty on-play and digital effect to blow up 15,000 DP totals worth of opposing Digimon, while also having the useful when attacking effect to burn security for every 10 cards in both players' trash. Then Just GX Ace here being another, beat stick in the deck, as when it comes down, you get to on-play one attack, in our case, on-play one attack, scoop up a Royal Knight trade card from hand or trash, and then take out a opposing Digimon with as much DP or less than itself, with the nifty one attacking effect to multi-attack, as well as being able to burn top of security for every 2 Royal Knight traits underneath itself. And for the current side, we have Alphamon or Yukon Ace as more so a, less of an ace tool given that it's a Blast DNA rather than Blast Evolve. Though it still sees use since you get to hard play or you can to control, for good spot removal on opposing Digimon. Though, also given how I built the deck, it is viable for it to be played into, since it does have the DNA digital requirements of just seeing a level 6 black over a level 6 yellow or red Digimon, thus allowing you to get the secondary effect to, burn 1 security and recover 1, which coincides with its alternate effect when it sees a security stack being removed to gain 3 memory, which also adds to the deterrent factor if you were to hard play or Yukon, since it can allow you to seal turn. And once again, with GX and Oriken, both will be absorbed into Yggdrasil. Though again, do keep in mind that you do not want to have multiples underneath Yggdrasil when you do drop Omni for the Omni turn, since once you blow up Yggdrasil with a spare of both, you will be hit with Overflow. And for tech option, especially given the toolbox nature of the deck, you do have the excuse to run the new BT20 Omekamon Ace with its full loaded body of Raid, Piercing, Blocker, and Evade, since when it comes down through the DNA evolution, it returns all opposing Digimon with the highest DP to bot deck. Since, for the most part, it's again subject to mostly being a hard drop body or DNA body, though a bit more niche given card lineup. Though it has the nifty ability to multi-attack if need be, or be able to self-activate evade, since once returned it gets to unsuspend when it sees any Digimon suspend. Well, that's it for the Digimon lineup. Now on to the Tamer lineup, which for the most case ends up being a full swath of the coolest of boys himself, the new BT20 Cool Boy. Since he ends up being, well, the only support tamer for Royal Knights. Since the main effect he has ends up being a Royal Knight exclusive Cool Boy. Since whenever he sees a Royal Knight on enter board, well, gets played out, you get to draw one and gain one memory. And has a nifty ability that whenever he sees one of your Royal Knights, whatever leave the field during the opponent's turn, you're able to pretty much place them with a Omekamon for free, allowing you to cheat out both Omekas to then get their on plays and have them set up to also further ramp Yggdrasil. Though for tech options, if the need rises, you could throw in EX7 Shoto to pair with Medieval Gallant, or to just generically give piercing and blocker to your bodies if need be. And definitely see some reason to throw in BT13 Marcus as both the memory center of the deck and means to punch out Floodgate rookies, since you immediately get to, well, on play, suspend them to then hit them with a DP reduction. And that's it for the Tamer lineup. Now on to the options, which ends up seeing the new bread and butter of the deck, being a 4-4 split of Royal Knights of the Purge, and the new option, the Last Guardian, with Royal Knights of the Purge needing no explanation, as they draw one and tuck one into Yggdrasil for the ramp, to then also delay to bring out a Royal Knight underneath Yggdrasil, foregoing its on play, but also granting them rush. And then the new Last Guardian being the search option for the deck, as a starting off turn, it ends up effectively being the equivalent of the Mem boost for the deck, since albeit it's a dual color Mem boost really, since you top deck 3 to then add a Cool Boy and one Royal Knight or X-Antibody trait from among them to hand will bot deck the rest, and ends up having a delay that protects your Omnimon, since whenever it sees an Omnimon name ever leave the field, and it gets to pop itself to protect it from leaving the board, thus allowing you to have some plays with OmniX, since you can pick anything other than OmniX to then have Last Guardian protect OmniX from leaving by its own, from being taken out by its own effect. And that's it for the deck itself. Now on to combos. And then going into combos, first off with the starting hand, for priority cards, especially given the Megazoo nature of the deck, you definitely want to see Last Guardian, either Omekas, Cool Boy, System Blanc, and Magnamon in your starting hand option. Since, for the most part, you do want to begin seeing your pieces and establishing your board. And, well, following that, definitely seeing Royal Knights of the Purge as another means to increase your ramp by being able to draw one and again establish a Royal Knight underneath Yggdrasil to then be used for later. And then the rest is pretty much just seeing any combination of the rest of the lineup as you see fit, definitely prioritizing your lowest costing Royal Knights to have them play out much more easier and much more memory efficient way. Since once again, do remember that King Drazo will immediately gain 1 egg during your turn, thus allowing Last Guardian to essentially be played out at the cost of a option, a Mem boost, and Magnamon to come out at 2 costs instead. And pretty much that's it for the reasoning behind, well, the starting hand. As for the most part, the basic idea is still Mega Zoo in its finest, since as you constantly just bring out bodies that will interact with the board to answer your opponent's board. With Cool Boy, while establishing Knights of Purge, Last Guardian, and Cool Boys on board to have effective answers, since again, Cool Boy also allows you to have your Omekas for free as long as as long as Cool Boy sees your Royal Knights leave board. And that's also not to mention Justmon DT20 Justmon being able to spawn out a token that also adds extra protection, especially considering that, once again, we also run aces in this deck that are rolling nitrate that will, if they continue, last until your next turn, will be taken in by King Jazel and not proc their overflow. Since, for the most part, again, it's just constantly ramping up and answering the board state. And once again, obviously, one of the many options, especially with Oryukin and GX Ace in mind, are the fact that on your kill turns, you can play around with them as, well, DNA options, since Oryukin can DNA using any of your black level 6s to then, alongside with your red level 6s on board, to come out and burn 1 security and recover 1 optionally. And then GX definitely being more limited for its DNA, requiring Genku and Jex on board, Jess on board to come out, but you get the added benefit of slotting in a Roll Knight from hand or trash to then pretty much stack at least 1 burn underneath its ability for its 1 attacking, as you swing with GX Ace, spend and burn away 1 security for every 2 Royal Knights underneath. And that's especially nasty come, well, even as a fallback if you can't kill them on the Omni turn. And for that perfect segue, we go into the new redefined variation of the Omni turn. Since for the most part, once again, the deck has now been able to ramp faster than ever, especially thanks to BT20 Omeka adding itself to Yggdrasil whenever it gets lead, and that it actually ends up allowing multiple copies of Omeka to end up there. Since, once again, Omni turn will blow up Yggdrasil and then spawn out all your unique names. And I will preface again, avoid as much as possible seeing multiple aces sitting in there, since again, you are spawning out your unique names from under Yggdrasil to then run over the opponent. And with that also being another pivot point, since BT20 Omeka's interaction with with the new OmniX, also allows for other further plays to close out games, since you could go into it and pretty much be constantly threading the rush down, well, pseudo blitz without suspending on any of your bodies, since again, OmniX is also a Roll Knight that you could cheat out from under Yggdrasil via this effect. Though, if you were to Digivolve into OmniX via Omeka's effect or over Omni, it also has the unique interaction with Last Guardian, since you could designate any other Digimon that isn't OmniX on board as the protected target to then delete everything else on board. But in response, Last Guardian will pop itself for its delay, allowing you to keep OmniX on board after its Digivolve effect, and allows you to answer the board by board wiping again, and also keeping a very powerful offensive body. And well, that's pretty much my look at Roll Knights in the 2.5 format. Since overall, it still hasn't really lost its identity as a Mega Zoo deck that is pretty much about purging the enemy with your very beefy boys. And well, this closes out our countdown tour of BT21 World Convergence's release. And we'll be seeing you next time in the BT21 format. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to help with the algorithm and to see what else I get into. And well, this is Cyberjaw signing off.